that this was a test fire preparing for the murders. But he said and maintained it there that there was a friend there. He just doesn't want the friend to get involved in all of this.
Yeah. And Rowan, right before we move into the fire, we should remind everybody, weigh in. Tell us if this interview is going well, if it's going bad. Give us those thumbs up, those thumbs down. You know, if you're shocked by something, hit the what or wow button while you're taking this whole thing. And you can hit it multiple times, as you see on the screen there. Rowan loves seeing those thumbs ups. But you can also leave a comment for us on our website. It's click2houston.com. It's right there on the front page. Just scroll all the way down, leave a comment for us, because we are taking your questions live. So please just do that so we can not only entertain the things that we had thought about this interview, but we can answer some of your questions as well. Rowan, back to the fire here. He talks about the match. He talks about this gasoline. I've heard from his family. You've heard from his family. They're all questioning where'd the gasoline come from that they had found. Let's talk about the fire and the experts during the trial real quick and how all that unfolded.
Well, we'll say AJ there mentioned it, that this was, he said it fits the narrative prosecutors wanted to say, that this was a pattern, or he was going into this number of steps or so. This is what prosecutors were alleging, that the ultimate thing would be what happened. Kind of you explain it. What do you recall for happening from trial there when they brought this all in? Because there was a thing about the alcohol bottle, the rubbing alcohol bottle, and there's a whole day worth of trial that this was.
Well, you'll remember though, they brought in an expert and she started the Houston, and I might be a little bit off here, but the Houston Forensic Science Center, and she started that whole arson testing unit aspect there, and I forget her name off the top of my head, but she was saying that when she received a lot of the fire stuff, they cut out the carpet, they put it in brown bags. Now if you know something about fire investigations, they usually put stuff in metal tins. And that is one of the things that she was expecting, but she didn't get it. Usually the other thing is, if you can't get it in a metal tin, they put it in a very specialized plastic bag and seal it so that all the fumes, everything can stay inside there. And so when she got a lot of the material, she did say, yes, there was rubbing alcohol on the carpet, but she did say that there was gasoline inside the bottle. She saw a little bit of it inside the bottle. Just I believe a trace was on the carpet. It wasn't very much. And she kind of said this all went back to how the evidence was collected. And that's something Rick DeToto kind of hit on a lot, was the evidence wasn't collected in what some would say is the right manner of collecting evidence, and that was one of the things that she hit really head on. And the one thing that I kind of keep going back to is he never disagreed that he started the fire. No. And he never said that I didn't use the rubbing alcohol bottle. He just him, along with the rest of the family, is wondering where'd the gasoline come from. And
he says it there. He says, yes, I did this, but it was sort of an adolescent thing. And during the trial, his attorneys brought that up, said his parents were aware of this, that he was got a stern talking to, he was punished for it, then they moved past it.
Yes, and that fire, I mean, we'd be remiss not to say this started right in front of his parents' bedroom. So not only do we have this fire, but we have the gunshot that went through the first floor to the second floor. AJ says that happened weeks before. There was no sheetrock on the ground, but he did shoot the gun. I think at the end of time he had used the pillows, the blanket to kind of do the thing. So we got a question from Anna.
Comes here. What's going on?
This is from HTX Law 713. He's asking about why wasn't the jury sequestered after the voir dire, especially with trial delayed 7 weeks?
That's a good question. It was something that we thought was going to happen.
Yes.
The judge never ruled it out. She told the juror members before this whole thing started that there's a possibility they could be sequestered. There was even a chance that this case was going to be taken out of Harris County.
Yes. And at the end of the day, they did get sequestered, but right when they were doing the verdict. So, but there was a chance because of the amount of media. We were there. Other media stations from around the globe we're actually here, putting specials that have still not aired yet together for this whole thing. So it's one of those things where the jury could have seen and heard a lot, and a lot of these jurors did hear something because Rowan, we both sat in it.
Not the jurors that made the ultimate jury, the 12, 13.
Yes,
they did not. But we sat through the whole jury selection, which was what, a month's worth?
A month, 3 pools, and about 60 to 70 people per pool. And
hundreds of people.
Hundreds, and you know, some of them heard some form of fashion, but nobody really paid attention to it.
And attorneys, both sides, prosecutors and defense team, are asking them, what do you know about this case? Have you heard anything about this case? There's someone who said, oh, I saw something on TikTok, and the attorneys kind of grilled her like, what did you see on TikTok? What was it about that you saw on TikTok? That person didn't make the jury.
No, and there was even a person that worked in the local news that was brought in to see it, and she was like, I don't know anything, I just moved here. But then she quickly learned that that was going to be a problem. Rowan, when it comes to the jury, you know, and selecting that jury, one thing that I keep remembering is John Jordan saying, I needed to ask them all if they were okay with life in prison with the probation after 40 years, because for a lot of parents, a lot of grandparents that would have hit that, they could have had an issue after, you know, with that conviction and convicting AJ.
There are people who said they couldn't do it. And that's something both sides understood, particularly prosecutors. That's not someone they want to be a part of the jury, the final jury itself. Then they asked them, there's a few people who made it close to the jury that they really try to ask them, like, okay, you said you think you can do it, but can you do this?
Yes, because they don't get a choice in the sentencing.
Yeah. They do not.
They don't. All right. So we're going to move on with the interview here, because that's a lot. The gas, the fire, it was just a little confusing. But next, we're going to be talking about the note.
Why that's the way it is, but I've come to find out in this judicial system, that's kind of how things work.
What would you say were some of those things that didn't fit the prosecutor's narrative?
I would say the first thing that we always brought up was why did they never check the surveillance footage from the business right across, literally a house over? You know, there's businesses, when you come out and you make that left, there's businesses all down that street. There's businesses on the back street. If they were so confident and knew for certain that it was me, they could have easily just checked that security footage, and then boom, it would have either proved our case, which we know it would have proved our case, or it would have proved their case. But they never cared to look because they felt it wasn't pertinent to the investigation, as they said many times throughout trial. I think another thing is which I believe it came out in the first trial, was the copycat note that was left. How is a note that's not even disclosed to the public, that is left at the crime scene, how does a copycat note be left on a vehicle of someone who's close to the family at the time? How does that happen? How does the person who left that note leave a copycat note that's almost identical to the note that was left at the scene? Like, how does that happen? And I'm in jail at the time, so it obviously isn't me. So how does that note left? You know, that didn't really make any sense, and I didn't understand why that wasn't allowed in. Obviously, the prosecutors fought to keep that out. Again, they continued to say that I never mentioned the masked man. That was completely made up. I didn't mention that until, I believe they said I didn't mention it until the statement. Well, I told Officer Reed as soon as I came out, he heard me say that there was a masked man in the house. But then after meeting with prosecutors, all of a sudden he doesn't remember, or he thinks someone else told him that. So it's just like, how is at one moment you hear it, you report that you hear it, and then when it's time to testify to it, oh, I don't really remember saying that anymore. It's like, how is that? It's not really giving me a fair shake and telling the truth, because that was something they really hit at during the trial, that, hey, he didn't mention this masked man until his statement. So that's another thing that was kind of frustrating. And then, yeah, there's a few things that the death threats, that was never brought into any trial. Why was it not allowed to be heard that my father was receiving death threats? Why is that something that had to be kept out? The DA felt it was irrelevant, But to us, it was very relevant. My father was receiving death threat. That was known information that was given to the police and the DA's office. And when they got that information, instead of investigating it, they were sending messages back and forth to each other about, hey, should we put it under a different case number? Should we put it somewhere else? Should we, well, I believe one prosecutor said that it's burning a hole in my pocket since I've received this information. Why are you trying to put it under a different case number? Why are you trying to do something different than investigating? Why wasn't it investigated? Because it didn't fit the narrative that they felt.
All right, we're pausing it there because there's some things we need to clarify with all of this here, because I mean, he's talking about a second note here, and you know, we knew about the second note, you know, going into the trial. It was one of those things that they tried to talk about in one of the other trials, but ultimately Judge Kelly Johnson ruled it out. She did not have it in there. But before
we go too much in there, I just want to clarify. He said that one of the prosecutors said this was burning in his pockets.
Yes,
it wasn't a prosecutor, is one of the detectives investigating the trial, or excuse me, this case in itself.
Yeah, so no, you're right, because I mean, I was actually going to hit that too, because inside the court records, we actually see the text messages between a lot of these detectives, and there is a case in there that they're wondering, do we add this to this, or do we interview and keep it separate? And I think ultimately the department decided to keep the two cases separate. But during this whole thing, there was an allegation that his father may have been running prostitutes outside of the gym, and that was made by Maxine Adams. And later on in the conversation, you'll hear me say something about Maxine Waters, and I actually messed up. It's Maxine Adams, and she had went in and did an interview with Houston Police Department homicide detectives to talk about that prostitution ring. They do have that on a recording, and we did put that on the evidence room, or Sinner or Saints, so that you can see that for yourself, because that's one of the things that some of the other networks had took down from their show, and we wanted to make sure that we had full transparency out there with this interview. And the prosecutors weren't too happy with us putting it out there, because they were like, hey, this wasn't true, this isn't true. John Jordan has told me multiple times that wasn't true, that shouldn't have been part of this case. And that's one of those things that AJ is saying should be a part of this case, because his dad was getting death threats. And a little bit later on, you're going to hear AJ talk about how his dad's gym was broken into, and AJ was in jail by a masked man.
Actually, we have a question related to that.
Oh, there you go.
Perfect.
We've got a related question to that. HTX Law 713 is back and asks, who broke into the Armstrong gym, and did HPD investigate?
We don't know who broke into the gym, but there is surveillance video that AJ's attorneys wanted to be brought in during this third trial, but it was ruled inadmissible, so it wasn't allowed to be played in.
No, but HPD did investigate. We don't know how long or how far of an investigation that went into, but it's fair to say they did look into the information.
And the thing that's significant about it's that the defense team, AJ's family, everyone will say, is that in the surveillance video, it shows that this person breaks in and just goes straight for the computer.
Yeah,
they
were
for the
going for a
computer. They don't go to the register, that they just beeline it for this computer. And that's what the defense team, his attorneys, family said, this is someone that should have been looked at closely.
Exactly. And then there's this note, the second note, because if you remember, on the kitchen table was a note left from the killer saying, come find me, something to the effect of come find me. And there was a second note that was left on a doctor's car. And it was, they talked to this doctor, they brought her in to talk more about that note. It was a lot of scribbling and stuff, but at the end of the day, that never got in. None of that ever got in. So, but there is a second note. It is talked about in the court records, but it never got into the actual trial itself.
And so that's what Armstrong, AJ there is referencing, this death threats that dad was getting, the second note. That's what he's talking about there.
Yep. And so I think there's a lot more to come here, but we should probably send it to our commercial break here for a second, and we'll see you guys in about 2 minutes.
All right, we're in break. Cool.
Odds that HTX Law 713 is Collings or DeToto?
Could be anybody.
It's someone a lot. Yeah, it's probably.
Could be anybody.
My family's like texting me prostitutes.
You got 2 minutes. You gotta go pie.
I'm gonna go to the restroom.
I don't know what photos that I just got
My sister's
text.
like, how Maxine Waters get into it?
Look, I screwed up.
One minute.
If I need to hit play, I can. Just tell me when. Bring us back in. We'll talk about Dad's death a little bit more.
Talk about who?
We're gonna
30.
go. We're gonna go into Josh in about 5 minutes. We should do the. I can do the.
The Vogue. Go to the website.
Yeah, the website questions.
15. All right, welcome back here. Where we just left off, you heard Antonio Armstrong there talking about some of the other parts that he thought wasn't brought into the trial, including a copycat note that happened weeks after the murders while he was in prison, that his dad was receiving death threats, and that there was that a break-in at his gym.
Hey, folks, and if you don't know right now, this is Real Juan Belogan. He's a reporter for KPRC. I am Jason Wynn. I'm the Investigates producer. Right behind us, it's going to walk through here in a second, is going to be Anna Lastra. She is helping us out online right now. So if you see on the bottom of your screen, you'll see that weigh in on the AJ Armstrong interview. Now, you can click those agree, disagree, what, wow, sad. You can click those buttons as many times throughout the interview. Tell us how we're doing. Tell us if you agree with some of the questions. We can see that live right now. The other thing you can do is go on to click2houston.com. We have a whole website dedicated to this, or a webpage, I should say, dedicated to this, and you can leave your comments below, your questions. We're answering them live. We've already taken a couple of them from HTX Law. It's 713. That could be any lawyer out there, so don't think it's the prosecutors or the defense reaching out to us. Hey, I got to throw it out there. We got to have a little bit of fun, Rowan. So, I mean, but a lot of things we've been talking about with this interview.
Yeah, to find that story, it's on our page at click2houston.com. It's how to join the conversation. Go to the end of the page itself to leave the comments there. So we left out again.
We just left off on the second note. The second note. And just to recap that and bring everybody up to speed, there was a note that was left on the kitchen counter saying something to the effect, come get me, I did it, you know, and then there was another note, it was scribbled, that was left on a doctor's car. And AJ was saying, why wasn't any of that investigated? Why wasn't the prostitution ring investigated? We're going to get alleged prostitution ring investigated, and all the death threats that his dad, Antonio Armstrong Sr., the former NFL player, was getting himself.
And then coming up, you'll hear him talk about his brother, Josh. So
And I'm
let's
gonna
get back to it here.
Hit the play button.
11 minutes in, like the officer testified to. They made that decision, and nothing was going to change their mind, no matter what they had. So the fact that my father was receiving death threats made no difference to them. They just brushed it to the side, like, oh, okay.
At the time, were you aware your dad was getting threats?
I wasn't aware at the time, but when that information was disclosed and, you know, we dug into it, it became aware that, wow, okay, this was happening and they're not going to do anything about it. So it, again, sucks because it's not fair to us. Like, how does 2 juries not hear that? I mean, how do 3 juries not hear that my father was receiving death threats? That's something that should be disclosed. That's something that should have been investigated, because if that investigation happens, who knows what information comes out that would have been beneficial to our case that we could have presented before the jury, but there was never any investigation into it. And they didn't tell us about it till quite a while later. I would say months, but it was quite a while later.
Were you aware of any of the other things that came out during trial about your parents, their finances, or some of the relationships they had with some folks?
When you say relationship they had with some folks, what do you mean by that?
There's the allegation that your dad was involved in something.
I heard those things for the first time in trial. That was nothing that, obviously I'm a 16-year-old kid. I was not aware of anything like that. So I can't speak on whether it's true. I really can't speak on that. All I can say is that I know my father. I love that man to this day. Never met a man like him, and I couldn't imagine it. But at the end of the day, if they would have investigated it and something like that came out, it would have been a really, really hard pill to swallow and see that, but it wouldn't have changed how I viewed my father, because I just know the man he was.
Because there's something, I believe, if I recall, said during the interrogation that maybe it was you just spitballing here, but you said, I don't know if my dad or if someone had a hit out against my mom. Do you remember that? Or something of that variation?
I said during
the interrogation call, I believe.
Believe a hit. How did I say it again, you said?
Something like, I don't know if there was a hit out against my mom. Something to that effect is what I remember.
Again, like I said, during that interview, there were things that I spoke on that just, looking back on, I can barely even remember that interview. If it wasn't for the statement itself, that whole night was a blur. And, just, again, it's probably one of those things that I said in the moment that didn't really, just trying to make sense of all of it, because I still to this day don't understand how my parents were murdered. It doesn't make sense to me how we are where we are. My father was loved by everyone, I felt. My mother was loved by everyone. They were great people in the community. So for me, it's never really made sense. And I guess at that point it was 16-year-old me trying to make sense of it. But it was obviously, that's another thing that they took and they blew it out of proportion again and made it to seem like, hey, he's lying or he's doing this, when I don't think any 16-year-old kid who loses their parents is going to be interrogated by police officers 7 hours later and is going to make sense of what they're saying. They're probably going to be all over the place. I feel like that was really lost in all of it, is no one knows how a 16-year-old is going to react, but everyone's telling me how a 16-year-old should react. I should have been more emotional. I should have been doing this or doing that, when you don't really know what you're going to do in that moment, because not many people, I don't know many people who have been in that situation before, but it's, that was always tough. Them, kind of really judging the way
right here.
We're going to stop there. All right, let's go back to that quote, the hit quote here. I've got it pulled up here.
So that he did say that. I recalled it because we heard it. This was an interrogation interview the night of with detectives, and you have the quote.
I've got the quote here. So he says, and I'm not like saying that my dad put a hit out on my mom and that to do that, went bad and then shot my dad. I'm not saying anything like that.
So the gist of the quote is he's not saying it and it was a hit, but he's kind of bringing up the question, maybe that's what happened. I don't know, maybe that's what happened. So I was trying to ask him about that. Do you recall saying those words? He forgot. Yeah,
because at the end of the day, his lawyers were saying something to the effect of he was a kid, he was just trying to get out of the conversations. He said, I think he even said too, he
I'm just trying to help.
He's just trying to help until he finally got caught in some of the lies that he had said. They were blatant that he had talked about earlier in the interview.
No, I think you said we had a question.
Yes.
Yeah, we got a question, and this has been a comment that we've probably seen throughout the time covering this, but Kelly wants to know, we're supposed to keep our personal opinions out of it, but why can y'all tell us how y'all feel? And I just want you guys to walk people through kind of our process as journalists as to why that's not the important part.
I get this all the time during trial. What are your thoughts? What do you think? And I tell people, and I'll say it again here, my opinion doesn't matter. I don't, this has nothing to do with me. We are just showing you everything. We're sharing all the facts. We're sharing everything that's happened, all of the things that's been brought up at the trial. We want to present you all of that. At the end of the day, he was found convicted by juries of his peers.
Yeah. I mean, there's 12 people after 3 trials that said that he actually did it. One of the things that I know is you may not like everything that we put out there. It's going to make you feel one way or the other, but we're doing that because you need to be informed and you need to make your own decisions for yourself. And we're doing our due diligence by being able to give you that information, and you kind of have to do that. And I know everybody wants to know, how do we feel? How do we get it? But at the end of the day, we can't be real journalists. We can't be in this type of media if we don't hold ourselves back and make sure that we're clear and content in the information that we're providing every one of you.
And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
No,
it doesn't matter. And this is a case that happened 7 years ago. It really shook the city itself, and people still to this day have questions. And so that's why we wanted to talk to Antonio himself. We wanted to ask him these questions because so many people in the community haven't heard from him. And since this conviction, they want to know what he thinks about some of this stuff that happened through the trial. And that's why we really wanted to talk to him, to bring this all to you raw as is.
And we're not blind. We see the negative comments too. There's a lot of people that don't want to hear about this, that would rather watch paint dry, and we invite them to go watch paint dry, but I think they're watching us. So that's one of the things that I just wanted to get across, and we do appreciate it. So if you guys do, please weigh in, talk to us about the interview. If hit the like, disagree, what, wow, sad, you can do that right on your app. You can do that on your website that you're watching, and hopefully you're on the click2houston.com, because like you just heard Anna give us a question. If you want to make a statement, comment, questions, all of that is right there, and she is going to ask us those things. So
I want to touch on something AJ said there. He talked about his emotions.
Yes.
He was like, how am I supposed to act? And to me, I was like, okay, he's calling us out, because that is what we said after we were just trying to give a feedback for what people, or not necessarily feedback, but just bringing people into the courtroom. Since the cameras weren't allowed into the last day, bringing people to the courtroom. I know I said he was stoic. I didn't see a reaction. I'm just trying to paint the picture for people at home. And he said, well, how am I supposed to act? What do you want me to act in this way? And learning from speaking with his family members, they said that's how Antonio Sr. is. That's how Antonio Sr. is. He didn't really show emotion, and they think that's probably where he inherited this.
Well, I mean, and he kind of hinted towards some of it earlier, by talking about the strength. He wanted to present strength to his family as he was just convicted. He heard his wife crying out in the middle of the courtroom. His family was crying, and he turned around and said it was going to be okay. And that was one of those I'm going to present strength moments. And I think looking at all of those things, that stoicness was probably him trying to emulate strength for everyone else.
I'm going to jump in with another question. Okay, so we got another question just now asking, did he call his brother before 911? And then asks, but yet he was afraid of his brother.
I don't think
so. He did call his brother before he called 911. He called them right away after the whole thing.
Yeah.
So it might have, I think that the cops separated them once they got him out and whatnot. So at some point in time, he talked to his brother, and his brother ended up showing up right there on scene on Palmetto Drive where this all happened. And the cops took pictures of him. We have pictures of him there. It was around the same time that they had put bags on top of AJ and his little sister's hands.
So he calls police, and from what we understand, he calls his brother afterwards because they play the 911 call that his then girlfriend Josh the older brother's then girlfriend made to police, and she is crying, frantic, said, I don't know what just happened. My boyfriend just said his parents were shot. He just ran out. I don't know what happened. They played that during the trial.
Yeah, and so there's a couple of different pieces there. So hopefully that helps, talk about the brother. But we do get into Josh here in a little bit, and we start to talk about Josh a lot, and we get some updates from AJ about Josh. So please listen in here now.
My character was and how I should have acted or shouldn't have acted.
How did you feel when your attorneys were suggesting that your brother might have committed these crimes?
I love my brother more than anything. Best big brother you could ever ask for. But from the time he came back from college till about 2 years ago, there was genuine fear of him because of how bad he had gotten with his issues. And I didn't even allow my son to be around my brother because there was that level of not knowing what he would do, how he would act, or what was going on. So for me, I had no idea. As much as I never wanted to, I didn't believe it could be that. I was also like, that's not Josh. The Josh from when he came back from college till about 2 or 3 years ago is not the guy that I grew up with, is not the guy that I knew, that I know today. That wasn't Josh. So for me, it wasn't looking at him, the person. It was looking at, okay, that disease that he was dealing with, the things that he said, the things that he did at that time. It was scary. So to take the leap to say, okay, maybe when he was really going through it and the things that were going on with my parents, it could have been Josh. But I know my brother, and I separate the two. I really do separate what he is now and before college versus that, I guess, that like 5-year period. Those are two completely different people. But I know how, like I said, I know my brother. I know how great of a person he is. We talk throughout this entire process. He's been supportive throughout the entire process. We talk to this day. He checks up on me, It's not what the prosecutors and some of their witnesses tried to make it out to be with my brother. As a matter of fact, Josh is doing great today. He's, for the last, I'd say 2 going on 3 years, he's been amazing. He has been doing well, taking it with his medicine and everything that he needs to do, working, going to school, social, like he's Josh again. So for me, that's what I care about most, is having my big brother back and not being in that situation of not knowing, because it sucked having to keep my son away from him. Like, that's his uncle. They should have a relationship. They should know each other. But I just wanted to, being a father, I have to protect mine. I have to protect my wife, my son, and they obviously come first. So I had to separate my emotions of my love for my brother with knowing that, okay, he's not really himself right now.
What do you want to say to your family?
Oh, I love them. I have the best family in the world. There's nobody like my family. They've supported me without question, without doubt, through it all. And to me, that's all that matters. I don't need, to be told that I didn't kill my parents, because I know I didn't. My family knows I didn't, and they support me. And that's all that matters to me. I have the best wife in the world, the best in-laws, the fact that, at 15, 16 years old, I'm hit with the case that I'm hit with, and they didn't even blink an eye. They've supported me every day. They've been at every hearing, been at every trial. I have people that love me, and I know how genuine their love is, and a lot of people don't have that, and I've learned that through being through this process. There's a lot of people that don't have that family support, that don't have the people that look after them and care for them the way my family does, and I'm forever grateful for it, you know, and we're not going to stop fighting. You know, like I said earlier, this isn't how this story ends, and however long it takes, whatever the process that we have to go through to get me back home, we're going to do that, and we're going to make it happen. And it's as simple as that.
Because you all are still appealing. Like, that's still the fact. You're still moving forward with everything you need 100%. To do there.
Yes, sir.
People will say, if you didn't kill your parents, then who did? Do you have an idea who might have?
I feel that answer probably lied within those death threats that my father was receiving. And whatever was going on, the answer was probably behind that door, but the DA shut it. To this day, I don't understand how they did that. Like I was saying earlier, how are you, when we found out and we went before the judge and she said they had to come off of their messages and things like that, how are you guys messaging back and forth about hiding this? Like, you didn't want this to come out. You didn't tell us till much later. So it's like, you knew something was there, but you chose to ignore it, essentially. You chose to not tell the public. You chose to not bring this before a jury. And they fought before every single trial. That was something that came up about how they did not want that to come in because they felt it wasn't relevant. I don't understand to this day how it's not relevant that my father was receiving death threats. Why can't a jury hear that? Why was no jury allowed to sit there and listen to those facts? And better yet, why was it never investigated? I just feel that shows even more. They made up their mind and they refused to change their mind. No matter what came before them, no matter what was presented. The things I mentioned earlier, I didn't even mention the burglary at the gym. Someone matching the exact description that I gave to the police, mask over the face, everything, matched the exact same description, breaks into my father's gym. They never had a break-in before, never had issues, but now there's a break-in afterwards. Walking around, searching for things. It's not like they broke in and like, hey, let's just go grab the cash register and run out of here. No, they're walking throughout the gym. They're looking for things. So again, why is that not relevant? Why is that not shown to a jury? There's multiple things that we feel was just kept from juries because they felt, hey, it's not relevant. But why? There's no answer for why it's not relevant.
How did you feel during the third trial when prosecutors brought in the mannequins, the props to create the bed, the props to create the stairs? Because that was also different from the first two trials.
I'll start with the stairs. Anyone that's been to my house, their description of the stairs and how you have to come down a certain ways to be able to see, it's just not accurate. You don't have to walk all the way down. From my third story, you probably could have walked down 2 or 3 steps and peeked your head and been able to see the door. It's not hard at all. But again, they have to make the narrative of, hey, no, you have to do this, and you got to walk he had to come all the way down. Because they wanted to make it seem like, hey, he had to walk all the way down and see this person, and that person saw him. So therefore, he has to be lying. When that's not the case. You only have to walk a few steps down. So I didn't agree with the way they presented the stairs.
So you're saying in that case, if you are coming down the stairs of the home, there's a way for you to see the person you said who did this without them seeing you back?
Yeah, there's a wall, like they showed that wall that they were trying to present throughout trial. If I'm walking, I don't want to be too specific with the number of steps and, but I'll just say like 3 or 4 steps. I believe they said I had to come down more than that. But if I come down just quite a few steps and I peep my head over, you can see out the creak of that. I mean, you can see right past that wall, right to where the door is. So there's a way to see and not be seen. So I felt the fact that they presented that as if there was no way I could have seen them and they didn't see me was just false. And with the mannequins and the bed, I just felt that was their way of trying to explain the planted evidence, because it doesn't make sense that Miss Rossi would say that, one, I was in the room, which is false. I never went in the room. Secondly, to say that I went and put pillows over their heads, and in putting the pillows over their head, I believe it was called expiration, she was saying, was taking place, and somehow, some way, during that, 2 tiny spots of blood hit in those exact spots where the sticker was, but somehow the blood also dried in the process of that happening. And from that moment till 7 hours later, those 2 tiny spots that were dried in that exact same spot where the sticker would be put never fell off, never flaked off, despite the fact that I was touched by officers. They even said that they grabbed me and pulled me out of the door. And if I'm coming out of the door, they would grab and pull exactly where that sticker was at, or where the sticker was placed. So how would that even, I just don't, I to this day, I don't understand their argument for the blood. It just never made sense to me. I feel planted evidence is the only way around it. You know, that you can't make that make sense. And then I believe Rick even brought up a great point during trial. If you, with how big this case is and how that was a big thing for them, how do you only peel the sticker back and see blood there, and then pull the sticker back and see blood there and stop? Why don't you continue peeling? Because now if there could be a bunch of blood right there, but they just stopped. And like Rick said, it's like she knew it was already there, so she just stopped. She's like, oh, we got it. We found it. There it is. It doesn't make any sense to me. And I'll refuse to ever accept that evidence wasn't planted, because I know for a fact it was. And the fact that it was allowed in the trial, and, you know, it sucks because, like I said, there's no other way around it rather than it was planted evidence.
You strongly believe that this was planted somehow. Who do you think would have planted it?
I can't give you an exact person, but it will come out one day.
Is this someone you believe did it?
We have our strong suspicions, but with the civil case, obviously right now it's being put on hold while this is worked out. But when that time comes, it will come out what we believe took place that day.
Why not share it now? Get you out of here. You say you know who might have either planted it or committed the crimes. Why not share it now?
Well, I can't say I know who committed the crimes, because if I knew who committed the crimes, I would have came off that information a very long time ago. But with the planted evidence, I don't want to. The civil process is a lot different than the criminal, and the last thing I would want to do is interfere with what's going on. So I'm going to take the advisement of my lawyers and not really go into that, but I can share that I strongly believe and know that that's planted evidence.
That's a good point to stop right there, Real One, because there's a lot to break down here. I'm going to take us all the way back to that staircase here, because that staircase was something where you remember John Jordan. If you go to our website on another page, not the one that we want you to leave your comments on, but you'll see a gallery of photos from that we had an artist come in and draw everything there. And when they brought in all those props and they built that, you can see in one of those photos, John Jordan, the prosecutor, about halfway down, squatting, looking straight out. And you'll remember, Real One, correct me if I'm wrong, he said you'd be able to see the shooter face to face, and that was a whole big deal during the middle of the courtroom. They had lights on and lights off for this process,
and they had the jurors get up, and the jurors were walking inside the jury box to try and show the distance between the stairwell and where they say the Armstrong parents' front door of their bedroom would be. So they had them walking around there. And Antonio, you heard him there say, he's like, well, that's not how it happened. There's a wall there that would have blocked him. So as he's coming down the stairs, he would be able to see who he says is the shooter, but they would not be able to see him. And prosecutors said that's not true.
Yeah, I mean, because if you remember the original investigation, that tape with the detectives, he says he walked down about 5 or so stairs, and now he's kind of hinting towards, well, maybe he didn't walk down 5 or so stairs. Maybe it was only a couple, and he could still see the bedroom door. So a little bit more clarity on that. But then we get back into the blood again, and we've kind of hit and talked about this blood over and over and over again. But it's still a pivotal point here.
It's a big part of this whole case.
And obviously you heard from AJ saying he believes that blood was what convicted him for this entire case. We're going to send this over to commercial.
Quick, I've got a question related to the blood. This person asked, who initially put the sticker on AJ? Whoever put the sticker on AJ should have seen the blood.
So the person who put the sticker on AJ here was an officer at the detention center, or excuse me, at the officer at HPD headquarters when he was brought in for interrogation. Yep. AJ was handcuffed at this point, and they just, as you can imagine, had the stick and just placed it on him.
And everybody gets a visitor sticker if you visit 1200 Travis Street. So you're going to get that posted right on top of you. These were the officers that did it. The people that they bring in at the time got orange stickers. I think visitors get white ones.
And then so that didn't they testify, or the person was asked?
The officer was there because it was one of the officers that actually brought him from the crime scene over to the actual police station there, and his job was just to transport for the most part for his partner. From what we learned in the case, his partner was actually the person that was doing the conversating with the higher ups and whatnot. And they, once they got him in, they said we didn't see any blood on him. I mean, there was a lot of people that were at that trial saying we didn't see any blood on those T-shirts. There was no blood on them.
Multiple investigation or investigators who look at shirts or evidence. They say we never saw that. They didn't see the blood flecks of blood underneath.
In the Houston forensic,
again, they said they didn't stretch or pull back the sticker as well.
Yeah, and you think about it this way: they called the Houston Forensic Science Center up, and they were like, "Hey, did you see this?" And they were like, "We tested the shirt. There was no blood on the shirt," and it went back and forth for a little while there. So it's one of those things that this blood evidence and Sergeant Rossi and how they found the blood evidence is questionable to a lot of different people, but to prosecutors, this was pretty much how she did her job. Normally, she went in, she tested for blood, found blood. There wasn't enough to really see what kind of blood it was, but I remember Ryan Trask saying the DNA came back to the father.
And so we're going to toss to a quick break here. And on the other side, we're going to hear Antonio talk about his sister.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I wasn't sure I heard you.
Oh, almost done?
Maybe.
Like 17?
Yeah,
excuse me, 16 minutes.
Yeah. Ish.
Yeah.
Wow. 2:20 now on that how to join the conversation.
2:20? Oh, wow, they're staying on it. Wow. Stand by just in case. Okay. 45.
I bet it was the total HTX.
It was him?
Because he's like, I'm going to bed now.
Oh, if they don't ask anymore. Well, Chris is still in action. We have an idea, though.
The
What?
questions were too well formulated to be.
Wow, you just really
15.
went there. Okay.
10. All right, welcome back to The View and KPRC 2 Plus here, the Antonio AJ Armstrong interview. If you just joined in, we were just talking moments ago about...
Well, first off, let's do this. You're Real Juan Belogan. I'm Jason Nguyen. It's been a long day. We've been talking about Antonio AJ Armstrong Jr. the entire day. So, and this is something that we've pretty much lived and breathed since February of this year. So, we just got done talking about some of the blood evidence. Again, we talked about the mannequins, the staircases. We've talked about his relationship with his parents, his mom and his dad specifically. We talked about the jury, the trial, and we still got much more to go here, because coming up in a little bit, you're going to see AJ get emotional. And it's one of those things that kind of, I believe, Real Juan, you can tell me how you feel here, but this was a pivotal point of this interview.
It was interesting. You can feel, how do I describe it? He gets emotional. You just understand why.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where I think if you were on KPRC 2 Plus earlier today, if you don't feel some sort of way when you watch this part of the interview, you should probably go back and watch the evidence room, Sinner or Saint, because that will tell you a lot about what this upcoming portion is. If you guys don't mind, go to our website, click2houston.com. There is a how to engage with us whole page right there. Go to the bottom. There's comments. Anna Lastra, she's joining us right next to us here. She's got some big pants because she is telling us the questions and the comments that you guys are writing in right now. And Rowan, I mean, they can agree with us, disagree with us right there. Click those emojis as many times as you want. You can do it on your app. You can do it on your phone. It's all good to go.
All right, I think let's just go right back into it. I'm thinking of the 911 call. I'm trying to think of things that people have brought up or asked. The 911 call when you were trying to get your sister, and prosecutor said you went straight to your sister's room, you didn't check in your parents' room. Why didn't you open the door to your parents' room?
I did not want to see my parents in the state that I feared they might be in. I don't know. That's also why throughout trial, whenever things were showed, I always looked down. I never want to see my parents in that state. It's not, I want to remember my parents how I remember my parents. And hearing how my mom was found and where my dad was and things like that, that's not something I have any interest in ever seeing, so and again, for that to be used against me, it sucks, because who runs in that room? I don't believe anybody in my situation would have, because again, I didn't want to see my parents. What I was worried was how they were. And my biggest focus was, I need to get my little sister out of this house. And I need to make sure she's okay. And we will find out let the police come in and do what they need to do and give us the information about my parents. But my sister was my biggest worry. It's my little sister.
Have you spoken to your sister since?
I have. I tell anybody who asks, she's had it harder than anybody. Even with me sitting in here right now, I'll never compare what she's had to go through to what I've gone through. She was 12 years old at the time. She's very strong, very, very strong. She not only lost her parents that night, but I was put in jail. My brother wasn't doing well. She's just, she's put with my grandparents, and nobody deserves that, what she had to go through. but I don't know how, but I know it's nobody but God. That girl is so strong. She graduated high school, she's going to a great university, made the dean's list. She's a rock star. There's nobody that's a very, very special young lady, and I'm just grateful for her continuous support. She's always supported me. She's always been there for me. To this day, she stepped up. My son calls her TT, and she's always calling and checking on him. She's always in town. Every time she's in town, she's going to see him. She's there for him. So it's a blessing to have her. I'm very grateful for everything she's done, and she's strong. But she's an Armstrong.
How has your faith how has your faith helped you since you've been here, through all of this?
My faith is the only reason why I have my head on straight. There's no other way around it. After everything I've been through, the things that I've had to sit through and listen to, there's nobody but God that I haven't lost my mind or just quite frankly been suicidal or anything like that. Like, it's truly my faith. God has kept me through it all, and that's why I can sit here and be okay, despite the fact that I'm in this prison physically, but I won't allow myself mentally to go to that place. I won't allow this process, all of this, to take anything from me. I'm strong in my word. I'm strong in my prayer, and I believe every word that the Bible says. And I know that as long as I continue to keep my trust in Him, keep my faith in Him, that this is going to work itself out. It doesn't matter to me what anyone else says about the process. I know that God answers prayers, and there's people that are praying all across. We've had people call from everywhere, not just in the United States, from other countries that have reached out to the family to let us know they're praying with us. And there's power in agreement. There's power in the agreement of prayer. So I'm just grateful for all the people that have been supportive, that have just lifted me up, because that's been a blessing here. You can be in here and at times, get the feeling like, man, like how am I even here? But I'll run into somebody and they'll be like, man, I can't believe you're in here. Man, I've run into so many guys throughout this process that have just been like, man, I've been supporting you. My family on the outside has been rooting for you. It's been a blessing. God's been with me everywhere I've been. And obviously coming to prison, I'm not the type of guy that's a fighter and a yeller and a go off like that. I'm just a quiet to myself. But and there's the worries of being in here, but like I said, God's been with me everywhere I've gone. I've been given favor with, inmates that have just looked out for me, who somehow knew me or heard about me somehow. I've had people reach out to me on the tablet, just messaging me from all over the place, that have just heard about my case and just wanted to reach out and say they support me and they're praying for me. So being hit with all that support, I know it's nobody but God that's just put this many people around me to be able to show me that love throughout all this time.
What's the day-to-day like here, would you say?
It is, I work in the kitchen, so I just am busy. I only work Thursday to Sunday. You have to work 4 days and you're off 3. But, I just keep myself busy. I do like to, I spend a lot of time, keeping up to date on my sports, because that's my love right there. But, outside of that, just keeping my mind occupied, because it's a process, it's something you have to take a day at a time.
You mentioned that this is not the end of your story.
No, not at all.
Tell us your story.
Before he talks about the end of his story, because I think this is a good time to talk about some of the things while we're wrapping up the actual interview with AJ Armstrong. We talked about a lot there. We talked about his sister. He got emotional, very emotional. Your takeaways from that part of the interview?
I think he's being honest in all of this. He's saying, take a look at this. She is the one person, she's going through it all. Mm-hmm. She's facing the storm of all of this, and she's the one kind of in the middle. Mm-hmm. And so I think you can see there that he's probably seen all of this, that while she has her family, grandparents, the entire family is there to support her, she's alone. Mm-hmm. In this moment, that she is in the middle of the storm, and he feels for her.
Yeah,
that he can't do more. Kind of something you alluded to earlier, the stoic, the strength. Mm-hmm. He wants to present that strength, and he can't do that for her.
No, and you know, it's great to hear how well she's doing, though. You know, and how well she has, you know, dealt with that adversity. But I mean, again, she's missing a mom, a dad, an older brother now. And good news, if you were here earlier in this interview, but Josh, you know, he talked about Josh, and Josh is back in the family picture.
He said Josh is in a good place.
And we talked to him about Josh, and he said, you know, he just talked to Josh last week. You know, they get messages on their iPads and stuff now in prison. It's all digital email. Robert Arnold talks about you know, how prisoners are now getting digital email. So please go to KPRC to investigate. You'll see that story, because that's how his family is now communicating with AJ in prison here, because it's a little bit more difficult to talk to him, you know, especially so far away here. Anna, you look like you had a comment there, or
No, I just wanted to say, you know, we have about 10 more minutes left in this interview, AJ Armstrong interview. So be sure to be dropping your comments on Click to Houston, and then I'll just jump in and ask them as I see them.
Perfect.
And we talked about his life in prison for a little bit, you know, because that's also important here, because now he's starting to interact with some of these prisoners here, and he's working in the kitchen. Seems like he enjoys his work there. Yeah,
he's there, Thursday through 4 days, starts on Thursday. He's enjoying it, from what he tells us there, that he has a cellmate. We share that. And he says it there that he's spoken with a lot of inmates who know who he is, obviously because of how big this case got. So he said a lot of people in prison said, hey, we don't believe it's you, that he has a lot of support there. He has support from around the world, as we've kind of alluded to, because of the coverage of it again, and that he's in his faith is really holding him on with all of this. And it's a big part of the entire family. They're very faithful people, God-fearing folks. And both parents were pastors. His grandmother's a pastor.
I mean, he's got the church life for sure. And it's one of those that, you know, he's had a lot instilled in him, and he's holding on to those inner strengths that his family had talked about here. So again, like you just heard Anna say, we've got about 10 minutes left of this interview. We kind of talk about a couple of new things, and we go back and kind of dig up some of the things that we kind of skipped over while we were talking about his father. So we're going to go ahead and play the rest of the interview here for you. We might make a stop here in between.
What happens next?
I can't tell you the time, I can't tell you the date, but I'm going to walk out of here. And I believe I'll be acquitted. I believe that this thing is going to work itself out. I have no choice but to keep my faith in God. I know that He answered my prayers when I first prayed in 2016. I know He answered all of my family's prayers over these years, and the people that we've met and run into. And I get back out. I've met so many people. This is what I want to do with my life. I want to help people who are in situations like mine, who are put falsely accused, people who are, you know, just need that family support, who need someone to be able to help get them a lawyer. You know, not many people are able to hire a lawyer. Like this judicial system it's not something that you can just fight. You know, you have to be able to have a lot of support to be able to get through it. And I've realized throughout my time that that's something I really, really care about, is helping make a difference, because there's a lot of people who could use that support, from lawyers to family to financially, just in any kind of way I could help. You know, I've told my family, like, we're going to start a foundation when this is over with. That sole purpose is helping people before they go to jail, juveniles, the whole thing. Like, I want to help. And I feel like that might be why I've gone through all of this, to be able to see how this whole process works, from the juvenile stages all the way up to now being in TDC. I've learned how this process works, and now I want to use what I've learned to help people.
Well, Antonio, thank you for your time. We're wrapping up here. Final moments, anything you want to say to your family, to your wife, or anyone who might watch this later?
To my wife first, of course. I love her very, very much, and she is so strong to be able to, you know, take care of our son and continue to work and do everything she's doing with working with the lawyers. Just she's doing a million things, but you couldn't tell by how strong she's handling it. And you know, I'm so grateful to have someone like her to stand by my side. I couldn't have picked a better woman to be my wife, and I'm just grateful for that. And to my family, y'all know I love you. I thank y'all for, you know, continuing to support me and going on this journey with me, because there's been ups and downs, highs and lows, but God is good, and I'm at peace. I'm gonna continue to smile every single day, not let anything take away my joy. And for everyone out there that supports, I thank you. You know, I've heard a lot of the people who have reached out. I know, like on my birthday, I got so many messages that my family sent me from just people all over, just reaching out to tell me happy birthday. Just things like that mean the world to me. It uplifts you to see the support that's out there, and know that there's people that, despite me being here, they know the truth. They see the truth, and the truth will come out. You know, what's done in the dark always comes to light, and the things that were done wrong, the injustice that took place, it'll come out one day. And I'm just going to continue to trust God and keep on living my life as best I know how until that time comes.
Antonio, thank you for your time.
No problem, man.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me from here? You talked about that masked man 3 times. What do you remember about that masked man from that night? Look at real on when you talk too.
About the masked man that night, pretty much the description that I gave the officers. It was a masked man, eyes, hole. That was about it, but it's very eerie how the exact same description is used in that burglary of the gym. It's the exact same thing. African American, eyes, mask, the whole 9. So it's, again, something that I felt was really relevant that the prosecutors didn't feel was relevant.
Do you think that the Maxine Waters was right in saying that your dad was a part of a prostitution ring?
I can't say whether I think she was right or not, because I honestly don't know. Like, I hold my dad in such high regard that I would need some, okay, this has been investigated, AJ, this is what we found, this is what we know, your dad did X, Y, Z. For me to be like, okay, he was a part of something like that. But it was never investigated. They just threw it under the rug like it doesn't matter. So, yeah.
Last one for me. The alarm system was a major pivotal focus point from Ryan Trask from the second trial to the 3rd trial. Your thoughts on the alarm system, and what do you think about it today after all of that?
Yeah, the alarm system was huge, obviously, throughout the trials. I mean, for me personally, I thought Chris did an amazing job breaking down the alarm. You have, 79 errors, I believe, in just July alone that weren't picked up with somebody coming in. Now, Mr. DaCosta said that this is normal, not a big deal, but for me, he's the president or vice president of that company. He can't come out and say that, hey, these 79 errors are concerning, because then he's going to be having his phone ringing all day long with people who have those exact same issues, potentially saying, okay, well, if it's a concern for that house, then should I be concerned? Is my alarm system not working? So he said what he had to say. But at the end of the day, you can't get around the fact that someone could come into that house and not even be, and the alarm not even pick it up, or the fact that the alarm system wasn't even installed properly. You're not supposed to have 2 doors on one sensor, but that's what we had. And we showed that that door could open and close and open and close and it not even be picked up. And we showed that you could come in that house and go straight up those stairs and not be picked up by that 1st floor motion detector. These are things that we pointed out, and like I said, Chris did an amazing job of breaking all of that down, and I don't believe in the alarm system that we had. I don't even believe that alarm system is still used. It was that 2 gig system. I don't even think it's something that companies use anymore because of the issues it was having. So for me, the argument that we made for the alarm system was factual. You can't have 100-something errors over the 3 months before the murders and say that that's not a problem. It is a problem.
And that's all the time we have. Thanks, Antonio.
No problem, man.
And
Real
that
one.
was it.
Right off the bat, I need to put this out there again. I did not mean the Congresswoman Maxine Waters when we were talking about this. I meant to talk about Maxine Adams, who was the actual person that went up to the detectives and talked. I didn't have my digital notes on me, and I just kind of said the name, and Waters came out instead of Adams. I know they're on different parts of the alphabet, but that is my fault there, and I just wanted to make sure that that's clear out there. But we were talking about Maxine Adams and her presenting the information that the Antonio Armstrong Sr. may have been a part of a prostitution ring.
And glad we kept it in there. This is showing you all transparency. That was the full interview you saw there. No edits, no cuts. That was everything.
Yeah, all we did was splice between cameras. And if you missed a lot of this portion while we were talking about the AJ Armstrong interview, we will have this back up on the website here in a little bit, so you can watch this in its entirety without Real Juan and I commentating throughout the whole entire thing. But we hopefully provided some context towards you guys. We got to try out this meter at the bottom so that you can actually weigh in. It's been very good to see that most of you agree with the interview, and that this was a lot of good information. We got a lot of comments, Real Juan, about your questions, and Anna said something about one of the viewers actually said that she liked your questions. She's just kind of disappointed AJ may have not have answered them the way that they had all hoped.
Well, that's what we do here at Channel 2. Journalists here, great journalists, making sure to get the answers for you all viewers at home and around. Thank you all for taking the time to watch the AJ Armstrong interview. As Jason mentioned, you can see it in its entirety on our website at clicktohouston.com, where you can find other stories on our coverage of the AJ Armstrong interview, our documentaries that we did, Sinner or Saints, and our full coverage of the trial with the bench.
Yeah, so you can see all of that online. And people are honest saying that a lot of people are going on there and taking a look at some of the extra material, because AJ Armstrong had captivated the Houston area for more than 7 years.
All right, y'all. Thank you all for joining us. Have a good evening.